Hey, this is Kristen Rodriguez. Well, I'm gonna let Derek and Edie kick off the meeting, but I just thought, with Zoom, it's like you gotta like acknowledge that someone is here, and it'd be like if we were in a room together and no one spoke to you. That would be weird. So, welcome. We're glad you're here. Okay, Edie and Derek, go for it.
Okay, so I think everyone's here, except the person whose computer got shut down, so they're rebooting it right now. So yeah, we're gonna kick off the meeting with a little bit of discussion with Kristen. So she's the OU Simulation Center Director. Yeah, she's got some things planned to say, and I'm sure you guys will love it. You'll love talking to her and listening to what simulations are all about.
Thanks, Derek. So hi, y'all. I'm Kristen. I am the Director of Simulation over at OU Tulsa. I want to just take a minute and introduce myself and then describe kind of my, I feel like it's old. I'm old if I can say describe my career path to, where I am now. But that's what I'm going to do. And then I'll talk a little bit about simulation. Okay, so I'm Kristen. I'm a Texas native transplanted to this great state about 10 years ago. I have my undergraduate degree in psychology, my master's degree in public health with emphasis on health administration and policy, the business side of healthcare, if you will. Career-wise, I've done everything from, well, I guess this isn't really career, but I started my work experience washing boats at a boat shop. It was the best job ever during the summer. It was great. Getting a tan, washing boats, there's nothing better in the 90s, right? Then, my professional career really started after I got my master's degree, and I've worked in research for, over 10 years now. So I am a little bit of a nerd, which will explain why I get so hyped up about simulation, because it's the coolest. So I first really took the deep dive into simulation when I was working at OU in Tulsa for the Department of Internal Medicine as their research coordinator. And in that role, I was part of a multidisciplinary group of people who came together to study at the adverse childhood experiences and their effects on adult health. And in working on that project, we decided to develop simulations to be facilitated by the Simulation Center at our institution. And that's where I got, it's like, oh, okay, so you have to write like a scenario for somebody to read and then understand, what you want to come out of that scenario. But really, I'm going to back up for a minute, because are any of y'all CPR certified by any chance? Okay, y'all have participated in simulation. Those mannequins, those dummies, the CPR, the compression, those are simulators. They're what we call low fidelity. So it means they're really good at like one or two things. They're not good at much else. But that's, where really the basis of simulation started, is these very basic, healthcare skills such as CPR. It's progressed now, it's 2020, and y'all, it's incredible what we can do in simulation. So we talked about low fidelity, which is like CPR using a pretty simple task trainer, which is what they're called. Then you can move into fidelity is, let me back up, I'm sorry. So fidelity is the level of realism in a simulation, okay? So that low fidelity stuff is really for practicing pragmatic skills like chest compressions, like IV insertion, like suturing, that kind of thing in healthcare, okay? Mid-fidelity simulation includes higher level task trainers and some low level mannequins. So I hope one day y'all get to come to the Sim Center and see what we have to offer in terms of our equipment and technology, because it's pretty amazing. But we do have adult patient simulators that are the size of a real human. They do everything from urinate, they bleed, they talk. A human's talking through them, but you can also program them to say things. And those are used for like code practice. You've heard of codes in the hospital setting when somebody stops breathing or their heart stops, and then the code team has to come in. So they learn those skills and practice those skills in simulation to perfect them before they move on to working on real people. So we can assess them to make sure they know what they're doing, so patient safety is improved overall. And then we have our high, and this is, I mean, in my field, it's very highly contested, but I consider the highest level of simulation to be using what we call SPs, which are simulated participants. So these are people, they are temporary employees at the university, and they train on everything from how to portray somebody with, you know, we've actually done somebody with COVID, or how to portray somebody with appendicitis or a broken wrist. So in doing that, you know, they have to learn, you know, all of, if it was a broken wrist, for example, they have to learn all of the different maneuvers that a physician would perform on them in order to determine the etiology of their pain. So working with SPs is incredibly cool, and we want to incorporate more of a hybrid formula where we have SPs, the trained actors, working with our mannequins, because it's not only about the hard skills that we can teach, it's also about, you know, what people call the soft skills, like communication, developing rapport, building empathy, remaining calm in a really tense, bad situation, how to deliver bad news to somebody. Like if, you know, my husband had a stroke 2 years ago, and, you know, a neurologist at Hillcrest had to come in and tell me, you know, yes, your husband's had a stroke. Well, there's a way to do that. You don't just come in and say, yep, it was a stroke, that's it. So it's also, you know, simulation is an arena where you can practice those softer skills and really hone them. So when you're interacting with people in your profession, whether it's, you know, patients as a physician, nurse, PA, or as a social worker, you know, with your clients, you are confident and capable in what you're doing. Y'all, I'm sorry, I'm trying to talk fast so I can get like y'all can get as much out of me as I have time for. But I want to ask, does anybody have questions about simulation as an educational methodology? Is anybody more excited about simulation than you were before you came here today? Yeah. Woo.
Peyton, we can't hear you very well.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you get like SPs? Is it volunteers or is it people that work at the simulation center?
Yeah, so we actually, we hire them. So they are like PRN employees, as needed employees. They do not receive benefits, but they are hired through the official OU HR system. And we call them in when we need to train them or when they need to practice. And then when they need to portray their cases. Yeah. It's a really fun gig. If y'all know anybody in the theater world who's looking for a side gig, tell them to look at the OU website. Anything else?
Kristen, will you tell them about other non-medical simulations that you all do, like how you work with the School of Social Work and do you do work, I think, with like the Masters of HR program?
Yeah, so actually we are one of the few simulation centers in the country, if y'all can believe it, that does interprofessional educational work just kind of seamlessly. And part of that is because we're a small campus. So while the simulation center is technically housed in the College of Medicine in Tulsa, we serve all of the programs on our campus. So that's social work, it's HR, it's the College of Education, obviously all of the health professions. We also serve external users, which are typically people in the social sciences who are actively working in their field. And they'll come in, their managers or supervisors will come in and say, hey, we've recently had a lot of people with depression presenting, and it's been really tough for our case managers to kind of know how to handle that and direct that in a productive way. So we'll work with them to develop a scenario that we can then employ on their employees to practice and kind of work through those skills. And typically all of our simulations start with what we call a didactic session, which is a skills training where you talk about the skills you're going to be working on during the simulation. So you're learning, that's where you're developing your learning objectives. And then the simulation piece is used to actually give you hands-on practice in doing the skills, so they become better embedded in your mind. So it's really, I mean, everybody thinks of simulation in medicine and that kind of skills training, but it's such a broad field. We can do everything from, you know, simulating a tornado and the after effects of a tornado and a huge disaster simulation to working with DHS and child welfare agencies and doing a home visit or a home assessment. So it's a very creative and diverse field.
Anybody else have some basic questions for Kristen about simulation or about what she does at OU? You can just unmute yourself and go if you have one.
I actually do kind of have another question.
Yeah.
So what is the briefing kind of before the simulation? Like, do you give a briefing to the people participating in the simulation? Like, how does that usually go down? I mean, I guess it depends on what simulation you're doing, but.
Yeah, so typically what we do is I'll give you kind of a day in the life, like a high level agenda view. So we would, you know, somebody would contact us and say, hey, we want to come in and practice these skills. And we'd say, okay, great, love to have you, let's do it. And they would give us their planned agenda, which would include the didactic or the teaching time, where there would usually be like a PowerPoint presentation, lecture, maybe there were pre-assigned readings that they would discuss. That, I mean, it's like a class, really. It's just like anything you would do probably at your level in high school or college for sure. So that's kind of the didactic portion. Then we like to give everybody a break and let them go, like let that material kind of sink in, let them walk away for a minute, and then bring everybody back to the room and do what's called a pre-briefing or an orientation, where we talk about the skills, the learning objectives that we are going to let them practice during the simulation. And then we'll walk through, you know, they'll see 2 different SPs today, 2 different scenarios. Each one will take 15 minutes. These are the warnings you'll hear. We have a very advanced AV system that gives announcements to keep everybody on track so you know where you are in the simulation. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anybody else on that topic? Cool.
Yeah, so like I said, when all this is over, when we have a vaccine or when it's deemed safe for people to get together in large groups again, I'd love to have y'all come out to the center. It's a great, awesome learning place.
And this cohort is our oldest running cohort. So they've been on the campus. So like where those picnic tables are, like they usually meet in building 3. And so you guys have all seen the building and probably saw it under construction from like when you started YPI.
Yeah, definitely. It took up a very valuable parking lot. A lot of people were really mad.
Okay, Derek and Edie, will you kind of help us transition to talking a little bit, us sharing with Kristen about where we are so far and any questions, and being mindful that, Kristen, do you have about 10 minutes left, do you think? Okay.
Yeah, so I think like we had talked about with you guys, sorry, just PSA, my camera's not working right now. It'll usually turn on its own eventually. But we talked to her a little bit about what the videos are, just from, you know, like a brief explanation, but she was really interested in hearing from some of the video committee members, kind of what you're working on, what your goals are, purpose, just so she can help understand a little bit better so we can move forward. So if you have a few people talk on that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, or also what Emily said in the chat too, like if you guys have any questions about how videos can be incorporated into the simulation, I'm sure Kristen will be able to answer that too. But yeah, is there anyone who wants to just like briefly summarize what the video committee has been doing? And just like, or just talk about like what your goal is. Yes, Maya.
Sorry, I don't know if my camera is working right now. I've kind of had weird issues with it today, but basically we've been kind of reaching out to people that are experts on different topics that we wanted to cover in the simulation, and like we wanted people to be able to be educated on and be able to have like civil conversations about. And just kind of, we were kind of planning on talking to them about different times where civil discourse has been like a aspect of their career and like how they've handled that, and then and just kind of what that specific topic is like in Tulsa in the area. And so we're working on reaching out to people right now. We have a few responses with that. And then we're working on creating our first kind of MVP of a project of what we want that video to look like, with someone in our cohort's mom who works in education, and just kind of figuring out how to integrate those videos in with the simulation part. But that's kind of an overview. Sorry, that wasn't very specific, but
That's okay. Daisy, do you have something to add?
Yeah, so like the more like broad goal of videos I feel like is to educate like the participants before they go through the simulation, so that whenever they're like participating in the discussions and in the scenarios, that they have like a like base of knowledge, so that they like have an informed opinion, like stuff to talk about basically, so that they're not just going in with like no knowledge about what they're gonna end up like what the scenario is about. So like if we make one of the scenarios about like a certain topic, we'll like give them a little bit of information so that they have an opinion, that they like know what they're talking about.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys want to share maybe a little bit about the recent updates and progress, like people communicating, because I think some new stuff has happened, so that'd be interesting to share as well.
So I was emailing with a professor at TU, who's a professor of political science and the dean of the art school there, the liberal arts school. And she got back in touch with me and talked about how she specifically, and I don't know if this is a situation other people had, but she specifically will be unlikely to do interviews because of COVID, but she offered me a bunch of other people to contact that I could get in contact with, and we could try and do interviews with them. So enough people are responding to the emails, I think, at least the ones that I have sent emails to, but a lot of them have COVID concerns and also concerns with their own duties at their jobs.
And I was going to build on what Daisy said. More recently, the video committee is trying to balance and work with the simulation committee on what we should focus the videos towards. Because like Daisy said, our initial thought was the videos would be great information on specific local issues that they could talk about using the skills that they'll gain in the simulation. But now we're wondering if we could ask them more personal questions about politics or how their field or their studies are incorporated into local issues, and more specifically how we like the discussions we need to be having in order to solve these issues, and less like quantitative or statistical pros and cons of each.
Yeah, Daisy, go ahead.
Also right now, with the emails that we have gotten responses, like the people that have gotten back to us so far, the like basically they want to like learn more, and they've like asked to like set up times to call. So we're gonna talk about that today, about times when we could like get a few of us on a call with them, like give them more information about like just what we would be doing in an interview and everything.
Okay, I think that just given that we have a few more minutes, Kristen, I want to allow you a chance to respond, but mainly with a question, and that would be, could you talk to them a little bit about some of what we've talked about with Derek and Edie about how can we, what thoughts or ideas do you have about how we can incorporate the videos into the simulation? Like how best could those be used? And also maybe do you know of any simulations that utilize video as part of their experience?
Yeah, sure. So y'all didn't know it, but you are designing a simulation between the two committees. This is exactly the kind of planning that goes into developing something like this, where you have something you want people to learn, and then an educational methodology through which you want them to learn it, which is a proven, it's one of the strongest methods of learning, that, you know, see one, do one, what is it? See one, hear one, do one. That doing is really what cements things in people's minds and gives them, you know, a chance to take the lessons that you've provided, but make them, you know, kind of internalize it and make it personal. So if you're teaching them, for example, to try to develop rapport with somebody with whom you have differences of opinion on political matters, you know, that's still an important piece of conversation, of civil conversation, regardless of the topic that you're talking about, right? So that it lets people practice in a very personal way what they would actually say, instead of just regurgitating words that they've seen in a slideshow or on a video. So yeah, y'all didn't know it, but you've been designing a simulation this entire time, which I think is really, really exciting. So in this COVID era, we actually use videos quite often, even outside of COVID. What we frequently do for our trainings is we would host a training for our SPs, and that would consist of, you know, somebody who's familiar with educational materials, and with the learning objectives, because y'all keep hearing me say learning objectives. Those are the critical part of a simulation. So be kind of mulling over, because I'm hearing a couple different things when everybody's speaking. So I'll touch on that in a minute. Excuse me. So we bring somebody in and they would say, okay, here's the scenario, you know, this is the goal of the simulation. These are the skills we're going to be teaching them. When you're in this role, this is how I need you to react to X stimuli, Y stimuli, Z stimuli, whatever it may be. For example, for some of our social work trainings, people will, if the learning objective is rapport building and empathy, you know, we'll give instructions like, if the learner, which is what we call all the people who participate in simulations, regardless of skill level, if the learner responds to you disclosing that your dog just died with, they just brush it off, you pull back some and you stop giving so much information so freely. So that's the kind of thing that the trainings consist of. And we always record those because our SPs are usually working in the gig economy and they are not always available to attend trainings live. So video is a natural part of what we do, made even more so right now by COVID. So it's, you know, today we get on, instead of being in the room together, we're in a Zoom room together and we record that, which is then uploaded to our AV system for our SPs to watch and learn. Emily, did I touch on everything you wanted?
No, that was good. I hadn't thought about the use of video to train SPs, so that would be, yeah, very cool. I could also see it maybe being utilized in this didactic session that you talked about.
Totally. Yes, absolutely. And actually, I'm glad you mentioned that because that's where I should have gone first, Jill. I'm sorry, I'm in SP mode. We've been doing SP training for the past 3 weeks and it's just been like a whirlwind. Yes, so often what we'll do with videos in the didactic sessions is show some role modeling or some demonstration. So you could say, okay, we're going to be working on this skill of remaining calm when somebody says, you know, an inflammatory comment. And then we'd cut to a video where you see, you know, me playing the role of somebody who is going to get upset and when somebody else says something upsetting to me. And then, you know, you could give the different responses and run through different takes of what that interaction could look like. And then after you see the demonstration, we typically would go into some discussion about it to understand, you know, what is happening at the verbal and nonverbal level.
Cool. Guys, any reaction to that? Or what? I'm actually just curious, hearing from Kristen a little bit, especially those on the video committee, does that give you some clarity? How does it make you feel? Does it bring up some questions? No questions. Is it
What about,
encouraged?
do you think it's, oh, Peyton, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you're good. I just said I don't know. It's kind of like reassuring, I guess. I kind of felt like I was a little bit unclear on what a simulation was exactly, but it's kind of reassuring to get details on that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, y'all, I would talk about this all day. I'll already talk to anybody because I'm from Texas and that's just how I do things. But when you get me talking about simulation and it's like, grab a chair, pull it over, let's talk. It's not novel. It's, this kind of education has been going on for decades. But the application, how we're applying simulation outside of the field of medicine is it's a novel application of an old educational methodology. And that's what's so exciting. It's not, we're no longer limited by keeping this type of work in the School of Medicine or the health professions, but we can apply it to anything. I mean, literally the sky's the limit. If you have a learning objective and there's something actionable that people can practice or learn or refine, you can create a simulation. And they're powerful, y'all.
Cool. Thanks, Kristen. Thanks. What could be like, we'd love to get you in some more conversations as they progress in their work. So it sounds like refining the learning objectives is a huge first step. And I know they've already done some work on that. But would you be willing to meet with us again, maybe after the holidays on one of these Friday meetings?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. If you'll give me which specific Friday you think would be best for you, I will block it right now so I can stay the entire time.
Okay, cool. We'll send,
Yeah, we'll communicate with you about that.
Perfect.
cool.
Perfect.
Okay. 1 minute left. Do you guys have any other thoughts or things for Kristen while we have her?
If I could just offer some guidance on developing the learning objectives, they need to be actionable items, so things that can change. So you can, obviously with skills training, it's, that's simple. You can become better at suturing and that's demonstrable. But in this kind of conversational, social scenarios that we're talking about, it's what emotion or what conversational skill do you want people to learn? What's cool and really interesting about this, and so incredibly timely, is that we can take those skills that you think are important for people to learn and apply them to the political situation in this country right now, which will give you a chance to also educate people on what's happening locally, with, locally as in, cities, state, however how you want to go. So I don't want to limit you and say just focus on the skills, but think about the skills first and then think about how to apply them in our current political situation. Does that make sense? Okay, because it sounds like, and I'm with you, I think I just applaud y'all so much. When I was in high school, I was not developing simulations to teach people about, speaking, knowing anything about politics, nor learning how to speak civilly to one another. I was playing soccer, so, so I just admire y'all greatly for this. And it's so timely and it's so exciting. And I'm more than happy to meet with y'all whenever. Just let me know, because if it doesn't get on my calendar, I forget it.
Awesome. Okay, I love what you said about think about the skills first and then how to apply them to, political conversations. So, cool.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Yeah. And if y'all, Emily and Derek and Edie, if you want to share my email address with people, if anybody wants to email me specific questions, I'm happy to answer. Just give me probably about, Derek and Edie know this, about 48 hours. I get a lot of emails, but I want to have an open door with y'all. So that if you have questions or need some more clarification, please come to me and let me help you.
Cool.
Awesome.
We'll do
Thank you
that.
so
Okay.
much.
Thank you so much, Kristen.
Cool. Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of your Friday afternoon.
It's just full of meetings, so so exciting. All right, y'all have a happy Friday and a happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks.
you.
Bye, Kristen.
So we have the like the learning objectives written out on Miro. And I think that like we've let everyone know that, but I'm gonna find them and just like put them somewhere on Basecamp that's accessible just so we can like be able to access them easily. And like we wrote these a while ago, so like they can change, they can develop, we can take things out, put things in. But I think it's good to keep those in mind as we continue to work.
Yeah.
But yeah, how do you all feel about that? Do you have any questions?
I want to know what you guys think. We've been like talking about this person, Kristen, for a while, and then anyway, I'm just first impressions, thoughts about what she said, reactions, etc. I would love to hear all of that.
I just feel more confident in the video committee and the potential that we have incorporating it into the simulation after someone has so much experience in simulation realizes how pivotal they could be.
I loved how excited she was. Like, I think that's really good for us to have someone who's like extremely excited for us, because I know that'll motivate us a lot more. So
Yeah, Derek and Edie and Adam, I just kept saying like, if the cohort could just meet her, like it would be helpful to just meet her because she's a lovely person and her interest and like enthusiasm is motivating. Yeah,
that's
what else?
what I was gonna say. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was just gonna say that it was definitely motivating to talk to her. Like, feels a lot better that she wasn't like concerned or like, oh my gosh, you guys have no time to do this or anything like that. Like, she seemed confident in what we had and like excited for the project. So that was definitely very motivating to hear.
Cool. Okay. Well, as we work today, let's just keep in mind with each group, like what are some running questions that we have? What do we, you guys have an expert at your disposal now. She's a fan of what you're doing. She's accessible. So as you're planning today, write down any questions that you have, and let's think of the best way that we can use her to help us move in the right direction.
Awesome. Yeah, Derek, do you want to kind of transition? Like, how do we want to? I guess I know the video committee wanted to talk and share about some things. Do you want to do that now?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. I think this was happening in the video committee chat. Started with Peyton saying something about, we could just have a brief discussion about whether or not we want to use a debate coach or a PR person or both. I think there's just like an issue of contacting them. I'm not sure. So what do you guys think? I know we brought it up a while ago that like maybe a debate coach isn't the smartest idea because they debate and they're like more focused on winning. But yeah, go ahead, Emily.
Well, I'm just gonna back up from that real quick and ask you all. Let's back all the way out and go back to our agenda, because we kind of jumped right in when Kristen was here. So let's go back and let's look at what's our focus today, what progress looks like, and then that'll give the video group and the scenario group a minute to sort of center and think about what are we doing today now that we've had that conversation. And then I'd say let's just have each group share a little bit about where are you this week, unless you all tell us, like, do you need a minute to be with, like, video group, do you guys need a minute to huddle up? Scenario group, do you need a minute to huddle up before we share? What do you think would be helpful?
I think going back to look at focus and meaningful progress is good, because we usually do that first, but we had to jump in quick. So I think that'd be worth going back to look at.
Yeah, let's do that, because I think it'll give us all a minute to go, okay, we're at the meeting, now what do we do?
All right, so this is our agenda for today. I'll go over the focus and Edie can go over what meaningful progress will look like. So our focus is to get work done and to motivate people to complete tasks outside of YPI. Oh wait, this is the old version. But yeah, basically it matters because we're nearing the end of YPI and it'd be really advantageous for us if we generated more momentum before the end of the year, before we all went to Christmas break.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure we have like 3 Sunday progress sessions and 1 monthly meeting left this semester. So let's use this time wisely. But meaningful progress for today would be, well, one, we spoke with Kristen, which I think was some clarification that everyone needed, whether they realized it or not. So I'm really glad that we got to speak with her and that she could talk on simulation so everyone can understand them better, and discussing the role of videos. And then also looking at our task list to actually make tangible progress and maybe putting some deadlines on them. Because, maybe specific dates is a little difficult, but like having a goal like this needs to be done by this, then we can stay accountable for the things on the task list. But yeah. Any questions or comments? Do we feel ready to discuss further?
Yeah, if you guys feel like you need a little bit of time, I can separate everyone into breakout rooms to like discuss, and then we can bring everyone back after like a couple of minutes and then share what video and simulation have done.
Yeah, I think a couple big breakout rooms is good.
Okay, let me make those real quick.
Yeah, I think, yeah, breakout rooms are beneficial for us. I think people like talking in smaller groups better sometimes too. And it'll just be for a few minutes and then we'll come back and share and then we can keep moving forward.
Okay, so I opened a breakout room. If you're in the video committee, go ahead and I think you should be able to move yourself to room 1, but I'll start moving people. And then like, if I haven't gotten to you yet, just move yourself.
I have a question. Is there time on the agenda where we're gonna like specifically talk about like how like videos and like the videos are gonna be implemented in the simulation? Like, is that like blocked out anywhere?
We have a little bit of extra time, and we can also always just push back the work time a little bit. So before we get into work time, we could definitely discuss that. We definitely should discuss that. So yeah.
And we do have Sunday, so if we need some more time and we need to bleed into Sunday a little bit, we can harness that. But let's see what we can get done today.
I also like you guys tell Derek and Edie what you need. Like, Daisy, if you guys need that time, let's do it now. Like, don't be afraid to like, we can go off script. We do it all the time, so you all as the ones working in committee, tell your co-facilitators what you need. If you're not seeing it on the agenda, we can pivot a little bit. So cool.
All right, everyone, let's head to our breakout rooms. And then I'll bring you back after like 4 or 5 minutes.
Are we good? What's happening? I went to go check on.
I guess I gave people the option to move themselves, but I'm not sure if they took advantage of that. So I should have everyone in the right spots.
Wait, how do you move yourself?
You like where you click on more, it has like join breakout room, and then you can just join the one that's offered.
Oh, I don't see the word more.
Or if you click on, there might be a spot for breakout rooms on your like bottom row.
No. But that's okay. It's Robin. I like see nothing about breakout rooms.
At the bottom.
Same here. I don't see anything either.
Okay.
It's just probably the old people that need tech support.
Speak for yourself, Granny.
You're more savvy than I am. Okay, I'm gonna be quiet now. Actually, Derek, can you send me an invite to go to the video group?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we want to go to the task list, I saw that some of you guys were on Miro and assigned stuff there that you wanted to work on. So if you want to share what you commented on, or if you done today or what was done. Anybody?
I know Derek and I both looked at the fourth one. I was wondering if you could explain a little further some of your comments.
Okay. My comments? Sure.
Yeah. I was reading it earlier. Now I kind of forgot. I guess you could just go through. Yeah, the bottom ones, I guess.
So yeah, I mean, I was just reading through, and then I just saw like some possibly vague wording. So I was like, oh, what is their task? But then I figured out it's this. But then I realized but then I noticed that this is like pretty detailed. Like, okay, so their task for this simulation, this is like a switch roles simulation. But I wasn't too clear on the flow when I got to the bottom, which is why I have some of those comments. But this one right here. So the main goal of the simulation is to learn how to respect others' opinions and to understand everyone's opinion to understand that everyone's opinion has value. And so I just saw an opportunity for us to like kind of specify a little more and then really define how we should measure which, team does this the best or something. That's just like something that we might consider before we turn this into an MVP. And then down here, I was just a little confused with the scenarios progress because I'm just confused that the simulation will begin with general, inclusive, and hopefully comfortable conversation about a variety of topics. I wasn't sure like how we'd get to that variety. And then you mentioned something in your note about reconsider the system for choosing the topic. And so I was just wondering where we ever just find a system like that. And I was thinking that it might be here where they just like talk about topics and then they get to one.
Yeah, that was my original idea, but I was always a little unsure of it. So I agree. It probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I just had that in case, because I didn't want to like make a certain group of participants, like force them to talk about a topic that they know nothing about.
Oh,
So it's
gotcha.
kind of a big issue that we don't really know how to combat. I don't think that my method is really the best way to do that, but I agree.
But yeah, those are just some of the comments that we've had on simulation number 4. Anyone else want to share what they've done?
Yeah, so I kind of just picked 2 and called them 5 and 6, but I didn't write any sticky notes on it. I like wrote on a separate doc, and I just I read through both of them, and I kind of just filled out a summary just for me, just so that I kind of understood what was happening. And so I did the one that was peer conversations, and I had written that one. And then the one above it is like, or 2 above it is finding your voice. So I did both of those. And with peer conversations, the goal of that scenario was like a participant walks into the classroom where where SPs will be talking about like a certain topic. And at this point, I'd written this before, but like I'm assuming that at this point, like participants and SPs, like they all know like the information they need to know going into this conversation. So whatever it may be about, they'll have an idea of the topic. And so the participant is trying to contribute to the conversation, make meaning out of it. But when they decide to join, the group ignores the participant and keeps talking amongst themselves. And then that participant must find a way to like remain calm and a way to respectfully express their opinions with their classmates and try not to get too heated and participate civilly when you're not in a not so civil conversation. And so this one was with people of the same age, ideally. The other one was the exact same, but in that one, it was targeted to more having a conversation with people that are older than you. So different, a conversation across different generations and trying to get those like older people to understand the views of like the youth. And so I think that it would be kind of redundant to do both. I think we should pick one or the other because they're both addressing the same concern. It's just like a different kind, like a different person that they're addressing. So we would have, and like, and I also had a question, like how many scenarios are we planning to do? Because if they're all about having conversations with people, I think we definitely need to like put some variety in there instead of like each scenario being conversations with a person. Like we had that game show idea. So like maybe incorporating like different elements that aren't just like conversations, but also address those
Right.
perspectives that we talked about.
I think this would be a good conversation to have with everybody, and also whenever we split back up into our groups again to discuss in detail with just us, but then also to like let the whole cohort know about this. So I think I'm gonna actually bring people back in to the main room now.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cough in your ears. You guys are doing awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
Emily, are you good?
Yes, I was mid talking and the like pop up to return to the main room popped up and I just clicked on it because because it like popped up on my screen. Sorry, video group. I like clicked to return to the main session because it just popped up and it was like a reflex. So sorry about that.
You can go ahead and finish what you're saying here then.
No, I mean, I really just kind of left them with some things to think about as far as like where they want to put their energy. So they can, you guys in the video group can talk about it when you get back together for work time.
All right, looks like the video committee is in high spirits. You guys want to start us off with like a summary of kind of what you guys did over the past week or so, like what you've done, and then simulation will go after you guys.
In our breakout room, we just discussed, what's going on this week. We got a few people working on following up with the people who responded. Derek is, or not Derek, sorry, Daniel is working on finding or securing Wes, who worked with the previous cohort. And then we are fine-tuning some MVP questions to ask my mother. We are looking towards developing an MVP pretty soon.
It was thankfully a pretty easy catch up. Nobody had any like contradicting information. Everybody was relatively on the same page after like a couple minutes of basic catch up.
All right, simulation. I mean, you could just like maybe go into detail a little bit about some of the things that you've done, or just a general overview of like what tasks we've done. Miller, I'm calling you out. Are you good to just summarize a little bit?
My computer's lagging. Is my mic working?
Okay, maybe not. Miller, Nina,
Is it?
Lane, any of you guys want to?
Yeah, sure, I can. So what the simulation committee has been working on, a couple of us were trying to review some of the scenarios that we have created. We've created a couple and just trying to see if they all like match the learning objectives that we were trying to target and that we came up with, and to see how we can like adjust and kind of reframe things with how we've learned how a simulation works. And so, like, for example, what I did was I picked two of them that kind of addressed the same like learning objectives, and I can go into a little detail, but this is there are two scenarios. This first one is called a peer conversation. So it's when you'll have like a participant and they'll walk into a room where SPs will be like talking about a certain topic, and then that participant will have that like the information, whatever we decide to provide them, will have information about a certain topic that these SPs will be discussing. And so the objective is for that participant to try and contribute to the conversation and try to like make it worthwhile. And so when the participant does decide to join into the conversation, that group decides to ignore that participant and keeps talking amongst themselves. So that person's objective is to try to be a part of this conversation without getting too heated and without being like not respectful. And so they must find a way to like remain calm and like way to express their opinions. But so when the participant does get the chance to speak, the SP will be dismissive and argumentative about their opinions. So they have to try to find a way to like express their opinions calmly, like I said before. And so this one, and there was another one that also addressed the same thing, but it was like a dinner table kind of conversation with family and people across like a lot of generations. So like it was talking to older people. And so one of the things that we're actually trying to figure out is like, do we want to find like SPs that are like our age? So like try to ask if we can get SPs that are our age and have like that like simulated conversation with a peer, or do we want to have conversations with like SPs who are older so that they represent like other generations and have conversations with them. And then we also want to integrate like some scenarios with conversations that do go well. They don't all have to be like opposition all the time. And also another point that I was talking about was like, we don't want to be redundant. We want to have a variety of scenarios. That way we're not like doing the same thing over and over again. They're not going through the same scenario over and over again. We want them to have variety. So we've come up with a bunch of different scenarios, but I was trying to address like which one that would fit better for that particular like learning objective. But those are some of the things that we've been talking about as a whole.
Nina. So does anyone have any comments about what each committee has done? I'll give you guys like a couple of seconds to maybe marinate on that. To answer your question, yes, Emily, there's a spot in the Miro board. Actually, I'll go ahead and share it so you guys can.
Yeah. I also copied that text box and pasted it on a message on Basecamp.
Oh, perfect.
But yeah, it's in the simulations like light gray box.
Yeah, it's right here, and then it's this box right here. We could make an extra frame for this too, in case.
Yeah, and I added to the message, I was like, if I could elaborate on any of them. So if you're confused about one of the learning objectives, I can try to explain it a little bit more.
And just a quick tip on Miro, you can search for things, you do a word search. So if you label a frame, so learning outcomes, if you label a frame that way, then you can do a search when you click the little magnifying lens in the top right. And I think you could probably even just do a search, text search. So it gives you options on there for things. So it's I found it to be really handy. A good practice would be framing things.
You can even just type in learning I typed in the word learning and it's the fourth one. It just says learning objectives, which I'm pretty sure if you click on, yeah, if you click on that, it takes you to that text box even. But
Whoever introduced us to Miro, that you are the coolest person.
I love doing it. Makes everything easier.
Uh-huh. Hey, well, just, one of my takeaways from hearing Kristen talk is how important the learning objectives are and articulating those. And I love what she said about, I'm reading my own notes, like that the learning objectives need to be actionable items. Like, so what emotion or conversational skill do we want people to learn? Like that's the outcome that we hope will come from that particular scenario. And I see the learning objectives as the key to integrating the videos and the scenarios. I'm going to say that again because I'm going to ask some follow-up questions. I see the learning objectives as the key to integrating the videos with the actual scenario. What do you all agree? Does that make sense? What do you think?
Well, I think we've been needing a key for a while, so that's pretty good to hear. And maybe we should focus on them, so we can start actually integrating our two parts of our project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think if, I was just over with the video group and you guys were chatting about learning, starting to chat about the learning objectives for like, what do we want to get out of this video or that? And the scenario group's doing the same thing. If we had a place, whether that would be in Miro or wherever, where we've captured, just start with 3 or 4 learning objectives that are for both groups, right? And then for like the video group, you could look at that learning objective and think, okay, how do I frame my questions? Who do I want to ask those questions to? And then that informs the scenario group can build the scenario around that too. And then it's sort of like you're building a lesson plan. She kind of talked about like those didactic sessions and then the pre-briefing. I see it all as like you're in a classroom, you learn about something, you have a little orientation about what you're about to do, and then you do an activity. So, I think framing it that way for me is helpful. And it all starts with what's the learning objective for that experience. So whether we do that, now as a large group before we go into individual committee work time, I could see that being helpful, but I don't know. Like, even if it's just to maybe pick 1 or 2 learning objectives for each group to go work on. Does that make sense? So then you guys are kind of working on the same thing, but within your committee time. Does anybody have, those are just ideas I'm throwing out there. So anybody have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I really like that idea. Maybe, finding the individual learning objectives and what overlaps is something that like really needs to be emphasized. But yeah, does anyone else have any comments? Regardless, before we go into work time, I think we need to address like what everyone hopes to get done today, so that when we come back, we can measure how much like progress was actually made.
Right, I totally agree. I think I just remembered Daisy's question that I promised that we discussed before work time. So it's about figuring out the role of videos in the simulation and like how they'd be organized together. So I hope Kristen's talk with us gave everyone a little more clarity, but this is what I gathered from it. Videos are crucial to the didactic portion, the learning portion of the simulation. And she has like a lot of knowledge on like how they're integrated. So I think I sent her email to.
Let me ask this, because I'm sorry, because I missed this portion, of course, I'm so sorry. but I'd like to hear from you all in the cohort. What did you hear from Kristen about what you think that could look like? How you think videos can be meaningfully integrated into the simulation experience? What thoughts or ideas did you discuss? Or did you have privately but didn't share because you're being like that? Yeah, it's okay to think about. I mean, because this question is paramount. I don't know. I honestly think we really need to answer the question. Even if we don't have the answer right now, we need to find it, which is how can we make the videos be a vital, meaningful, part of the experience? Maybe we haven't answered it, or maybe we haven't. I'm just way behind the game. Do we have an answer to that? What do you guys think? Oh, you know what? We could use the voting on the side. You could be like, yo, can we do that here? Oh, we only have raised hand.
That out. Daisy, if you want to talk.
Yeah. What I took from like just now talking to Kristen was just that like videos are important to like the before of like the scenarios, but like we didn't like have enough time to like really get into like how she thinks we should incorporate them. So I feel like that's something that we can like email her about, because she will like know more about that. And that's like all I took from like what we talked to her about, like not how to incorporate them was, but just that like they should be incorporated because they're important.
Let's say after the discussion we had with Christian, I think the main realization that I and Max and Parrish had were that we might have to make some tonal shifts in the video or focus on a different aspect. And I think, like Emily said, we need to fine tune our learning objectives and make them the majority of our decisions in video based on those, so we can actually accomplish it and not have the videos just be kind of worthless and aimless.
Yeah, okay, here's what I'm gonna make a suggestion, because I'm looking at these learning objectives over here. I don't think they're clear and they're not all actionable. So I think we need to, as a cohort, refine them, get clear, and then go into our committees and work. What if we took like a 5-minute break, everybody can stretch, get their head on, and then come back and let's, as a group, rewrite our learning objectives where they're clear, they're actionable, they're talking about what skill we want people to learn, and then that allows the committees to get to work. Does that sound okay? Thumbs up, okay. Let's do that.
All right, I'll set a timer.